Hi, this is Kirk Lorange with John Broughton on Retrospectives 3SER KC Radio.
Did you have formal guitar lessons as a youngster growing up?
I had 2 lessons when I was about 16, which was about 4 or 5 years after I started playing, in Montreal, Canada, by a woman called Mrs. Ballard, who told me that I had all bad habits, that I should forget everything I'd learned so far, and she put my foot up on a little stool and bent my wrist backward. And at the end of the first lesson, I asked her if she could just please play me something, you know, some little classical piece or something. And she said, "Oh, no, I don't have the time. My next student's coming." And then the next lesson, again, I asked her if she could just play something, because what I really wanted was to hear a really good guitar player play, you know. And once again, she said, "Oh, no, I can't, because I've got to go out." And I realized that she couldn't really play. That was when I realized, I thought, hang on, she can tell me what page to open up in the book, you know, in the how to play guitar book she had. But she couldn't actually play herself, really. And that's when I thought, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. So I had 2 lessons.
Tell us about some of the work professionally you did in Canada before you moved out here.
Well, let me see. Gee, that was so long ago. I actually moved to London between Montreal and here. So I guess, let's see now, I used to be a commercial artist when I was about 18. Then I started playing live, just kind of instrumental acoustic guitar in Montreal, and started making more money in a night than I could make in the week. So I gave up the commercial art job. And then I moved to London, England, a few times. You know, when you live in North America, it's so cheap to get over there that you can kind of fly back and forth quite a few times, you know. And I went over there at one stage with a fellow Canadian, a Montrealer called Dwight Druick, of all names. And we had a kind of a Loggins Messina sounding unit, the 2 of us then. Nice harmonies, 2 acoustic guitars, and we actually traveled down to Greece and spent 6 months writing songs in Mykonos, and flat broke, of course. It sounds all very wonderful, but it was kind of tough work. And went back to England and actually did an album. We met a guy called Marty Lewis, who was a really good engineer, producer, and he did some demos with us. And on the strength of those, a guy called Nigel Thomas, who was Joe Cocker's manager. Now, he's the guy who brought Joe Cocker out to Australia when Joe kept getting busted all the time.
That infamous tour.
Yeah, and on his wall in his office, he had this big framed collage of newspaper headlines, you know, from Melbourne and from Sydney. And I remember looking at that thinking, yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool place. Nigel Thomas, he actually recorded an album called Druick and Lorange. He wanted to put it out on his own label, EAR Records, European American Records, which actually spells ear. Ear Records. I remember the logo was a human ear, and the hole in the middle of the LP was where the ear hole is. It was rather distasteful. Then what happened? Then that thing kind of fell apart, but I was still signed to this guy. So I then went to Nashville on my way back to Canada, where he was buying Starte King Studios. He had a lot of money, this guy. He was a young guy with heaps of inherited money, and he thought he'd dabble in rock and roll. What we didn't know, of course, at the time, when we saw Joe Cocker coming in and out of the office, that Joe was in the office yelling at him and pointing his finger at him, telling him what a rip-off agent he was. So then I came here, basically, to get as far away from him as I could, because he kind of left me stranded in Nashville. Oh, it's a long story. A long time ago now. And that album, I've still got a copy of it somewhere that's still in cellophane, you know, cello wrapped. It's still pristine.
Your rarity.
Yeah, the Druick and Lorange saga. And Druick then went on, and he went back to Montreal, and he became a kind of a French-Canadian pop star, singing in French and getting a name for himself there. And now I forget what he does. I think he's a psychologist or something. And I came here, basically. And
what was your knowledge of the Australian music scene before you got here?
none whatsoever. I met an Australian girl in London who was the reason I actually came out. You know, I came out to follow her back home, and she wound up being the mother of my 3 kids. I seem to remember in London meeting someone. Someone came over that I probably met later when I moved here, a jingle producer, and he used my tape recorder in London to dub some things. And I remember hearing these dreadful commercials, thinking, "Oh man, poor guy, having to do that kind of thing," you know. Which, of course, I went on to do years later, a bit of production in that area. But the first thing I heard when I came here, because I arrived on Christmas Day, 1974. Do you remember what date that was, Dan?
That was the cyclone.
That's right. That's the day I actually flew here. So my first exposure to Australian music was about 2 days later, after I'd recovered from the jet lag, and it was Bill and Boyd singing "Santa Never Made It to Darwin," and I thought, "Oh man, I'm in trouble." But then I realized there was more to it, and then it's strangely enough, I went on to work on some of their albums too, Bill and Boyd, in later years. So there you go.
Initially, did the work come to you pretty easily when you got here, or was it a bit of a battle at first?
No, it was kind of easy, as I recall. I just kind of got out, and I went to the very first night I was in Sydney. I went to where the hell was it? The YWCA, perhaps. They had a folk club in one of the floors there. Mm-hmm. And I met a bunch of people who I still know to this day. Doug Ashdown was playing there. And Doug and I went on to form a band called Sleeping Dogs in Sydney. And we had a great time with that little band. Most people remember Doug as, you know, Mr. Winter in America. But he's actually a rock and roller, the old Doug, and very good at it, too. I met a girl called Wendy Gross. Do you have ever heard of Wendy?
Name rings a bell.
Yeah, she did a couple of really nice albums back then, kind of Joni Mitchell-y, beautiful, clear voice. And then I met Richard Clapton within a couple of weeks moving in and started playing with him. I was back in the, what was he doing then? Goodbye Tiger, I guess. Yeah.
I guess your guitar is synonymous with those classic Richard Clapton albums.
Yeah, well, it's kind of become that way, hasn't it? It's interesting how at the time it was just, I didn't really know Richard, and he didn't know me, but they've endured. And it's funny enough, I saw him about 6 weeks ago. He came to Brisbane up here, and he was doing a record launch. I think he's put all the old stuff out again, remastered it. And I insisted, I called him up, I said, "Man, like it or not, I'm going to be there with my guitar for those 5 tunes." And it was good. We had a nice evening up here.
He's living up your way now too, isn't he?
No, he used to. He's back in Sydney now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Convey to you the sound that he wanted on those records?
No, not at all. No, not really. It was all just experiment until something seemed to really work, Oh, there's a long saga to that making of that record too. I had a big blue with the producer. Anyway, a long time ago, all that.
What about playing live and touring with Richard in those days? I guess you'd have some pretty good memories there.
I've got some pretty hairy little stories there. One that I wouldn't want to really go into here. He keeps you on your toes, Richard. It's never a dull moment with Richard. There's always some wonderful drama going on. It's great stuff. I love it.
Other than Richard, you toured with many great other names. Any particular enjoyable touring experiences that
Look, I've really enjoyed all the different people I've toured with, and when you're on the road, you really you get to see all sides of people, and the crabby early morning side, and the every side of everyone in the band gets a good airing. I've toured extensively with old Mark Hunter too, in the Mark Hunter band. Now that was a bad band. Those guys were they were real rock and rollers. Those guys. Glenn Shark, he went out with the band, and after he left Little River Band, and that was supposed to be a 7-week tour, and wound up being about 7 days, as I recall. One of those things that just didn't happen.
Yeah.
Who else have I been out with? That's about it, maybe. Oh, then Brian Cadd and Glenn, they did another thing called Blazing Salads a few years ago. Do you remember that?
I do remember them, touring around as a duo, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a kind of a real show thing, and that went around quite a few times around Australia. That was fun.
Of all the sessions you've done over the years, were there any that were particularly obvious to you as something special, even before the finished product was out in the shops?
Well, I think Goodbye Tiger was one of those. Yeah, we kind of knew that those songs were such strong songs, and some of the tracks was really like pulling teeth. You know, I remember some of them doing them 3 or 4 times to get them right, and then this Blue with the producer, and but we kind of knew that what we were doing was worth pursuing and really getting it right. A couple of other ones too. There was a John Swanee song, a little ballady thing though, but that had a real pop hook. What was it called now? Acoustic thing. Jeez, I can't remember the titles that they sing. But it was one of those tunes that got a lot of airplay. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't necessarily selling all that well, but it got played every 5 minutes, it seemed. Like Capricorn Dancer, there's another one that got played every few seconds. It's kind of hard to remember, you know, what you thought of something before it became a household kind of sound, you know.
What about the other end of things? Any nightmare sessions that didn't work for you at all in the studio?
Oh, look, you get those all the time. I mean, you know, fortunately, most of the time they're just kind of radio jingles or something, and no one need ever know who you were, you know, who you are. Although a lot of the time with my slide guitar, it is a distinctive sound, and there's sometimes I think, oh boy, that's going to go out there, that horrible thing that I don't like, that the producer seemed to think was the best thing he's ever heard, and he's going to keep it, and I don't want him to keep it, you know. Sometimes you feel like having a little clause in a little contract saying that I have to agree to that lick is okay, you know? But of course you can't do that, so.
You find, as a player, you have to vary your approach to a session according to the artist that you're working with, or in a commercial way, maybe the client you're working for? Look, it depends on the producer. You know, most people I do jingles with, especially when I lived in Sydney, you know, I don't do that many up here because I never really met the people who do it, and I'm not really pursuing that anymore anyway. But you get to know some producers just hire you, and they just want you to play what you play. They don't presume to tell you what to do unless it really clashes with their taste. They just basically hire you because you're the guy they want to play there, you know. You know, usually it's me they've hired. They want me to play it. Often you also get things where they have an idea and you pursue that idea for a while, and then they say, well, what would you do there? And then you just do something that comes naturally, and they go, oh, that's better. Okay, we'll do that. So, you know, you have to feel your way through with the producers. You don't want to really tell them that you've got something better until that, you know, it's all very diplomatic. You've recorded with a lot of singer-songwriter types. For you as a guitarist, well, what's the key to backing an artist of that ilk?
Well, I'd say really listen to the lyric, you know, make sure that you're aware of what the song's about and where the singer's singing, and let the vocal breathe and fill the holes, you know, and just try and capture the feel
of the vocal, if you know what I mean. Whatever sentiment the vocal evokes, try and match it musically.
Overall, what would be for you the golden rule to successful session playing?
Oh, play less. Yeah, I would say that just whatever you think you would like to put there, divide it by 4, and then divide it by half again, and then maybe start building up from there, But I think that's really the key, because often you go in and maybe they put the drums and bass down, and then the guitar goes in, and you still don't realize. The producer knows that there's going to be horn lines, and the keyboard's going to go on, and the background vocals are going to do this and that and the other. So it's always better to start off leaving nice big holes and filling them up later if necessary. But it always sounds better anyway. The less you play, the nicer the stuff you do play sounds. It's got kind of room to sit there and in the tune.
Now, your solo album that came out in the early 80s, No Apostrophe, met with a lot of acclaim at the time, and those of us who bought it at the time were always anxiously awaiting a follow-up, which sort of never happened. Why was that?
Why is that? Because record companies are such a pain in the neck, is why. I put my heart and soul into that album, and I just got grief after that from the record company, and no need to go into details of who was who, but look, it was just, I could tell you stories that would go on for hours, and you wouldn't believe what you were hearing, what goes on at record companies. And I think they're defunct. I'm just looking at mp3.com. I don't know if you've seen that site. Are you aware of MP3
yes,
and all
absolutely,
that?
Yeah.
Well, these people now, they're just saying, send your music in. If any orders for your CD come in, we'll print it, we'll press it, we'll send it to the customer, and you tell us how much you want to sell it for, and we'll send you half of the money. So basically they're saying, we'll be a record company for you with no obligations, and you'll get 50% royalties. Well, show me another record company who can do that, and I'll do a backflip for you.
You'll sign.
It's just too good to be true.
Yeah.
And I wrote a how to play guitar book. Have you heard of that? The truly, totally different guitar instruction book.
Yeah.
I'm selling that on the internet. I sell books every day, all over the world. It's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to people like me, the internet. It's just fabulous. I can't tell you how it's eased my worried mind, as the song goes. Because when you hit my age, and all you do is play guitar, and there seems to be a general waning of interest in music out there. It's kind of a worry. But not when you got the whole world out there at the end of your computer screen.
Well, while we're on the subject, let's talk about Plain Talk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us all about it, how it originally evolved.
Well, I started giving a few people lessons, and then people asked me to do workshops, and there was only one thing I could ever tell them how to play guitar. That was the thing that I did in my brain was actually very simple, and it took people asking me, how do you play? And I used to tell people, gee, I don't know. I don't quite know how I know what I know. But when you think about it, and I then realized quite early on that I had a real simple thing I did in my brain, that I developed this little trick. I call it my trick. Just a way of looking at the fretboard and a way of thinking about music. It's real simple, real straightforward. Doesn't involve knowing scales or doing all that boring modal stuff, and it's just a way of kind of perceiving music. Anyway, I wrote a little 14-page booklet once for one of the workshops I put together, and just in a normal format, little diagrams and things, just text kind of explaining things. And then one night I had this flash that if I did it as a comic strip, that I could get all the questions that people asked me over the years about this technique. You know, all the leading questions could be incorporated into this comic strip conversation. And so I started planning that, and then I started, because I've always been a bit of an artist illustrator, you know, I knew I could do it. And then I had to get these two characters in the story, the teacher and the learner. I had to get them trapped together in some situation, and I thought of an airplane. You know, when you sit on a plane sometimes, on a long flight, you sit next to the person next to you. You've never met them, you'll never see them again, but you can become quite, you know, close to them. And so, yeah, I kind of wrote it in one night, to tell you the truth, and mapped it all out, and then spent 7 or 8 months illustrating it. And my brother in Montreal, I flew over there. He's a graphic designer, and he did the cover and got it ready for the printer. And it comes with a little slide rule thing that really graphically shows you how the guitar works. You know, I showed it to a friend who'd been playing for 15 years, and he said, "Man, I've learned more in the last 5 seconds looking at this little thing than I have in all the years I've been playing." He didn't believe really what he was looking at, and then, of course, once he heard it was right. Yeah, there you go. And I'm just self-publishing it, and it's kind of neat.
And you're getting steady sales all over the world.
Yeah. Today I sold one to Auckland, Israel, Regina, Canada, and where the hell else? California. A lot go to Texas, and a lot go to Georgia for some reason.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? But that's great, and the internet, I tell you, is just the most wonderful thing.
Wonder how we ever did without it.
Yeah.
Done a lot of soundtrack work over the years as well. Are they different to work through, you know, in comparison to recording with a particular artist?
No, it's all pretty much the same, John, really. You know, you've got to just basically play as well as you can, and if the producer's got some specific thing he wants, do it to his satisfaction as best you can. I do like working with pictures, putting music to pictures. You know, matching the vibe on the screen, the visual thing with the guitar thing. It's very enjoyable. I'd love to do more of that. And again, the internet, there's a site out there where you can load up samples of your music, and people who are looking for music for soundtracks can go and listen, and if they like something you've done, they can contact you, and you can actually score a whole movie for someone remotely in a whole other continent. And all send the music down the line in MP3 format. It really is, it's come a long way.
Tell us about The Train band that you're involved with.
The Train is a band in Sydney that's been going now for, I'd say, 15 years. It was the remnants of Moving Pictures. The drummer, bass player, and the last guitar player they hired, who also sings really well, Kevin Bennett. So it's Kevin on the guitar, and Mark Meyer on drums, and Ian Lees on bass. They were all with Moving Pictures when it fell apart. And we just got together in Sydney. We kind of knew each other, and just put a little band together, started playing around Balmain, just doing our own taste in music, our favorite tunes, some of our own stuff, but mostly just covers. We just wanted to keep it lightweight. And started getting huge crowds coming, and to this day, I do it the first Saturday of every month down in Sydney. I fly down. Mark lives in Adelaide. He flies out from Adelaide, and still enough money to make it worthwhile. Great little band, a great band.
You're involved in one or two other bands too, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got a band up here called Mumbo Gumbo. Similar kind of thing, you know. We do some of my own stuff, Ry Cooder stuff, Little Feet, that kind of swampy, slidey guitar stuff. I work with Brian Catt up here whenever he does some shows. I have an association with Elizabeth Lord, who's a great singer from Byron. That's about it, I think. I've also got a little thing going up here with a great keyboard player called David Bentley, the David Bentley Blues Review, which is just starting up. Some great players there. Greg Lyne, who's, he's been around for years playing bass. Wonderful bass player. Remember, he used to be in Crossfire.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And Kerry Jacobson from Dragon, the drummer from Dragon. He's okay. So the four of us are putting a little thing together. Yeah, I keep busy.
Yeah, you got your finger in a few pies there.
Yeah.
Any recording plans for any of those bands?
No. But I've got plans of my own. Now that I can see that there's a new way of marketing music, I'm fired up again.
Yeah.
Finish the tunes off I've got and put them down, move on, play, I mean, it's just open now. The whole thing has reopened itself to me. I don't have to go through a record company. How beautiful.
Yeah, you sound pleased. Do you still find yourself learning things about the guitar after all these years of playing?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was just sitting there then, actually playing when you called, and I was thinking that you basically just have to do it every day to keep familiar with the whole thing, It's a daily thing. You just have to keep reaffirming in your brain what you know, and it's like if you don't do it every day, little chunks of it fall off in your memory banks, and then you have to remember it all again. So the only solution is just to keep doing it every day. But you keep relearning everything, and every once in a while, a new little door opens up at some part of your knowledge that was not quite up to par, and you add a new little element to your way of thinking of it. It's an endless thing. Yeah.
And just before we wind up, Kirk, what changes have stood out most to you in the Australian music scene in the time that you've been here? Well,
unfortunately, I have to say that it's basically a decline in interest in live music and music generally, I think. It's just that technology arrived, and somehow it just seemed to take the joy out of music for a lot of people. And I guess it might be because music now is just kind of made by machines mostly.
Mm-hmm.
People sense that. They see that it's kind of been trivialized by some machine sequencing a bunch of notes and, sampling drum sounds and doing all that. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's definitely, to my mind, a bit of a decline, although I must say that I'm hopeful, because just in the last couple months in Sydney, I've noticed a resurgence of people wanting to hear music again. They want to go out. They remember that it was kind of good fun, and so I'm glad about that. It seems to be coming around again, and as all things, things come in certain cycles, peaks and troughs. Maybe we've hit the bottom and we're going back up to a peak, which it would be real nice. Yeah, actually, it's starting to turn around down here too. So hopefully, it's a trend all over. Oh, that's good news. Yeah. As for the popular music of the day, I hate to sound old and everything, but man, a lot of it I just can't really, I can't fathom. Oh, you're not alone there. Good. Okay, Kirk. Well, thanks for your time. It's been my pleasure. Been a treat finally catching up with you. Thanks for your contribution to some great Australian music over the years. Thank you very much, John. Best of luck with everything. I'll be sure to give the website a bit of a plug when this goes to air, so people can chase up your book and whatever else you got on offer. Okay. It's my www. Yep. Got it here. Fantastic. Thanks, Kirk. Okay, John. All the best. Bye, man. Bye-bye.